Because here's the truth. God doesn't need your help figuring things out. He doesn't need you to stress over the details. He doesn't need you to overthink every possible outcome. He just needs you to trust. He needs you to stop acting like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and start believing that He's already made a way. He needs you to stop doubting every step and start moving forward with confidence, knowing that even if you can't see the next part of the journey, it's already set in motion. Think about the way God has always worked. Look at the stories in the Bible. When the Israelites stood at the Red Sea, they didn't see a way out, but God had already planned their escape. When Joseph was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, he had no idea that God was already setting him up for a position of power. When the disciples were in the storm, panicking because they thought they were going to drown, Jesus was already in the boat with them, ready to calm the wave. In every single situation, God was already moving before they even realized they needed him to. And that's exactly what he's doing in your life right now. He's already handling the things you're worried about. He's already preparing the way for what's next. He's already positioning people, aligning opportunities, shifting circumstances, and putting everything in place. Just because you don't see it yet doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because it doesn't look the way you expect it doesn't mean it's not working for your good. But as long as you keep trying to control things, you're going to keep feeling overwhelmed. As long as you keep stressing over what's already being handled, you're going to keep robbing yourself of peace. As long as you keep doubting whether things are going to work out, you're going to keep living in a cycle of frustration. And it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to carry this stress. You don't have to live in constant anxiety. You don't have to wake up every day feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You just have to trust. You just have to believe that even when you don't see the way's already being made. You just have to remind yourself that God has already worked things out before and he's doing it again right now. You just have to let go of the need to know everything, the need to control everything, the need to figure everything out, and start walking in faith, knowing that it's already being taken care of. You can't hear God's voice when your mind is too loud. You wake up every morning, and before you even get out of bed, your mind is racing. You're thinking about what needs to get done, what went wrong yesterday, what might go wrong today. You're analyzing every decision, every conversation, every situation. You're trying to plan out the next move, trying to figure out what's coming next, trying to control everything before it even happens. And in the middle of all this noise, you wonder why you can't hear God. It's not that he's not speaking. It's not that he's not guiding you. It's not that he's not answering your prayers. The problem is your mind is so cluttered with worry, doubt, and overthinking that you can't hear him. You're so focused on trying to solve things on your own that you're not even giving him space to speak. You're drowning in your own thoughts. And in doing so, you're blocking out the very guidance you're praying for. You keep asking God for clarity, but clarity can't come in chaos. You want direction, but you're too distracted to receive it. You want peace, but your mind is constantly running at full speed. You can't hear wisdom when you're caught up in worry. You can't receive guidance when you're too busy trying to figure things out on your own. You can't recognize God's voice when your own thoughts are louder than his. When was the last time you truly sat still? When was the last time you silenced your mind long enough to hear what God was actually saying? When was the last time you stopped running through every possible scenario and just allowed yourself to be present in his presence? Because here's the thing, God doesn't yell over your distractions. He doesn't compete with your overthinking. He speaks in stillness. He moves in peace. He leads in clarity. But if your mind is always full of stress, worry, and anxiety, you'll never be able to recognize his voice when he speaks. You're overthinking because you want answers. You're overanalyzing because you want certainty. You're replaying scenarios in your head because you're trying to predict the outcome. But faith isn't about having all the answers. Faith isn't about knowing exactly how things will unfold. Faith is about trusting even when you don't know. It's about believing even when you can't see. It's about being still and knowing that God is already working on your behalf. But you don't like being still. You don't like not knowing. You don't like sitting in uncertainty. You feel like if you're not constantly thinking, constantly planning, constantly figuring things out, then things will fall apart. But what if the very thing you're trying to do, control everything, is the very thing keeping you from receiving the answer you've been waiting for? What if the reason you're not hearing from God isn't because he's silent, but because you're too busy making? God is speaking, but are you listening? Or are you too distracted? Are you too focused on trying to do things your way? Are you too caught up in your own thoughts to even recognize when he's trying to lead you? Because the truth is, you don't need another strategy. You don't need another plan. You don't need to spend another sleepless night replaying the same thoughts over and over again. You just need to quiet your mind and listen. Think about how much energy you're wasting on thoughts that don't serve you. Think about how much time you've spent worrying about things that never even happened. Think about how many moments of peace you've missed because your mind was too busy stressing over things that were already being handled. You're carrying so much mental weight, and it's not because God hasn't given you peace. It's because you haven't allowed yourself to receive it. And the crazy part, most of the things you're overthinking about aren't even problems yet. You're stressing over things that haven't happened. You're creating scenarios in your mind that don't exist. You're living in fear of the unknown, allowing your thoughts to control you instead of surrendering them to God. And the more you overthink, the further you drift from peace. The more you analyze, the more you block yourself from hearing God's voice. The more you try to control, the more frustrated you become when things don't go the way you expected. But what if you just stopped? What if instead of overthinking, you just surrendered? What if instead of analyzing every little detail, you just trusted? What if instead of filling your mind with worry, you filled it with his word? Because here's the truth. You can't think your way into peace. You can't stress your way into clarity. You can't control your way into faith. The only way to truly experience the guidance, wisdom, and direction that God has for you is to let go of the need to figure everything out and simply listen. But listening takes discipline. It takes intentionality. It takes a willingness to quiet your mind, to shut out distractions, to stop running through a million different thoughts and just be present. It takes trust. And that's where so many people struggle, because trusting means releasing control. Trusting means being okay with not having all the answers. Trusting means believing that God is leading you even when you don't see the full picture. You say you trust God, but do you? Or are you only trusting him when you agree with the plan? Are you only trusting him when things are going the way you expected? Are you only trusting him when you feel like you have some level of control? Because real trust means surrendering even when you don't understand. Real trust means letting go even when your mind wants to hold on. Real trust means silencing the noise, shutting down the overthinking, and making room for his voice to be the loudest one in your life. But you can't do that if you're constantly filling your mind with worry. You can't do that if you're always trying to solve problems that God has already taken care of. You can't do that if you're refusing to be still long enough to actually hear what he's saying. The answer you're looking for isn't going to come through more thinking. It's going to come through stillness, through surrender, through trust, through learning to quiet your mind so you can actually receive what God has been trying to tell you all along. But that's not how faith works. That's not how obedience works. Your job is to be faithful in what you've been called to do, even when you don't see the results right away. Your job is to keep moving forward, even when the outcome isn't clear. Your job is to plant the seeds, but the growth, the harvest, that's God's responsibility. Think about a farmer. When a farmer plants seeds in the ground, he doesn't sit there stressing over whether they will grow. He doesn't dig them up every day to check if they're sprouting. He doesn't try to force the plants to grow faster. He simply does his part. He plants, he waters, he nurtures the soil, and then he trusts that in due time, the harvest will come. That's the same way faith works. That's the same way obedience works. You do what you've been called to do, and you trust that God is handling the rest. But what happens when you don't see results right away? What happens when it feels like you're doing everything right, but nothing is changing? That's when doubt creeps in. That's when you start questioning whether it's even worth it. That's when you start feeling like maybe you should just give up. But here's the thing. Obedience isn't about immediate results. It's about trust. It's about doing what you know you're supposed to do, even when you don't see the outcome yet. It's about having the faith to keep going, even when you don't have all the answers. Look at the people in the Bible who walked in obedience. Noah built the ark before there was even a drop of rain. Abraham left his home without knowing where he was going. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt without knowing how they would survive in the wilderness. None of them had all the details. None of them saw the full picture before they moved, but they obeyed anyway. They trusted that if they did their part, God would handle the rest. And he did every single time. So why do you think your situation is any different? Why do you think you have to have it all figured out before you take a step? Why do you think the weight of the outcome is on your shoulders? You weren't created to carry that burden. You weren't designed to control every detail. You were called to be faithful, to walk in obedience, to take the steps that have been laid before you, and to trust that God is working things out behind the scenes. But obedience isn't always easy. Sometimes it means stepping into the unknown. Sometimes it means making sacrifices without immediately seeing the reward. Sometimes it means continuing to show up when nothing seems to be happening. And that's where so many people give up. They want instant results. They want to see the fruit of their labor immediately. And when they don't, they assume something is wrong. They assume they must have taken the wrong path. They assume they should stop trying. But what if the breakthrough is right around the corner? What if the blessing is already in motion, but you just can't see it yet? What if all God is asking from you is to keep trusting, keep believing, keep moving forward? You can't plant seeds and expect a harvest overnight. You can't take one step of faith and expect to see the entire journey unfold in an instant. Growth takes time. Breakthrough takes time. Transformation takes time. But as long as you're walking in obedience, you don't have to worry about the outcome. That's not your job. That was never your job. You have to get to a place where you're okay with not knowing every detail. You have to get to a place where you trust that if you're doing what God called you to do, then everything else is already being worked out. You have to get to a place where you stop stressing over results and start focusing on faithfulness. Because when you shift your focus from outcomes to obedience, you'll start to experience a level of peace that overthinking could never give you. You'll start to realize that you don't have to have everything figured out to keep moving forward. You'll start to understand that faith isn't about knowing, it's about trusting. You weren't called to figure everything out. You weren't called to predict every outcome. You weren't called to control every detail. You were called to be faithful. You were called to take the next step. You were called to move even when you don't see the full picture. And when you do that, when you truly surrender the outcome to God, you'll realize that he was working on it all along. God is already moving behind the scenes. Stop stressing over what he's already handled. You wake up, and before you even get out of bed, your mind starts running. You're thinking about everything that needs to get done, everything that could go wrong, everything that feels out of your control. You carry this weight like it's your responsibility to make sure everything happens exactly as it should. You stress over things that haven't even happened yet. You replay past mistakes as if reliving them will somehow change them. You try to piece together solutions for problems that only exist in your imagination. And in the middle of all this mental chaos, you forget one simple truth. God is already moving. You don't see it yet, but he's working. You don't feel it yet, but he's shifting things in your favor. You don't understand it yet, but he's making a way. But because you can't physically see what's happening, you convince yourself that nothing is happening. You assume that if you don't see progress, then there is no progress. But that's not how God operates. He works in ways that don't always make sense to you. He moves in spaces you can't see. He aligns things behind the scenes long before you even realize you needed them to be aligned. Think about all the times in your life when you were worried about something, stressed about how things were going to turn out, only to realize later that it was already being worked out for you. Think about all the moments when you were overwhelmed with anxiety, trying to force solutions, only to find out that God had already made a way before you even knew you needed one. That right there should tell you something. If he did it before, why do you think he's not doing it now? If he worked it out in the past, why do you think this time is any different? The problem is you keep looking for visible signs. You want proof before you trust. You want confirmation before you let go of your worries. You want to see things happening before you believe they are. But that's not faith. Faith is trusting that God is moving even when you don't see it yet. Faith is believing that the doors are opening even when they're still closed in front of you. Faith is understanding that just because something isn't happening on your timeline doesn't mean it's not happening at all. You waste so much time and energy worrying about things that are already being handled. You stress over relationships that God is already working on. You overthink situations that are already in motion. You sit there trying to come up with your own solutions when the answer is already on the way. And the worst part, your stress doesn't change a thing. Your overthinking doesn't speed up the process. Your anxiety doesn't make things happen any faster. All it does is drain you. All it does is rob you of the peace that God is trying to give you. Imagine how different your life would be if you truly believed that God was already handling everything. Imagine how much lighter you would feel if you released the need to control everything and just trusted that things were unfolding exactly as they should. Imagine how much peace you would experience if you stopped trying to figure everything out on your own and just believed that God was already working behind the scenes. Why? But that's the struggle, isn't it? You want control. You want to know exactly how things are going to work out. You want to see the entire plan before you take the first step. And when you don't have those answers, you panic. You convince yourself that you have to take matters into your own hands. You start trying to force things. You start making decisions out of fear instead of faith. And in doing so, you block yourself from receiving the very thing you're hoping for. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to figure out every little detail. You just need to take the next step and trust that everything else will fall into place. God never asked you to figure it out. He asked you to trust him. From the moment you wake up, your mind starts working overtime, trying to make sense of everything happening in your life. You analyze, you stress, you replay scenarios, trying to come up with a solution before the problem even fully develops. You feel like you have to know every detail, like you have to have a plan for every possible outcome, like you have to control everything before you can feel at peace. But the truth is, God never put that pressure on you. You put that pressure on yourself. You convince yourself that if you don't have it figured out, then nothing will go right. You act as if everything depends on you, as if your stress is what holds everything together. But that's not the way it works. You were never meant to carry this on your own. You were never meant to have all the answers. You were never meant to live in a constant state of worry, fear, and overthinking. The weight you're carrying is too heavy because it was never yours to carry in the first place. You've been praying for answers, but you're still trying to solve things your own way. You're asking God to move, but you're also trying to control the outcome. You say you trust him, but deep down, you're still holding on to the need to figure everything out on your own. And that's why you're exhausted. That's why you're frustrated. That's why it feels like no matter how much you plan, no matter how much you think, no matter how much you analyze, things still don't feel right because you're trying to do God's job instead of doing what he actually asked of you. Think about all the times in your life when you didn't have the answers, when you didn't know how things were going to work out. Think about how much stress and worry you carried during those moments. And then think about what actually happened. The situation didn't play out the way you expected, did it? Things unfolded in a way that was beyond your control, in a way you couldn't have predicted, but you made it through. You here, you're still standing. That right there should tell you something. No matter how much you try to figure things out, no matter how much you stress over the details, God's plan will always be bigger than your understanding. His ways will always be greater than your logic. You might not see the full picture yet, but that doesn't mean the picture isn't being painted. Just because you don't know how it's going to work out doesn't mean it's not already working in your favor. But your problem is you don't like not knowing. You want to see the entire plan before you take a step. You want to know every detail before you trust. You want to have full control before you let go. But faith doesn't work like that. Trust doesn't work like that. You're not going to have all the answers before you move. You're not going to have every detail figured out before you step forward. You have to trust before you see. You have to believe before you understand, and you have to walk in faith even when you don't know exactly where the path leads. Every time you try to figure things out on your own, you limit what God is trying to do. Every time you try to control the outcome, you block the blessings that are already in motion. You're so focused on what you think should happen that you don't leave room for what God is actually trying to do. You think your way is the best way, but what if God has something even greater planned? What if the things you're stressing over don't even matter in the bigger picture? What if the very thing you're worried about right now is something that God is already taking care of? You waste so much time trying to figure out things that are already being handled. You stay up at night stressing over things that are already being worked out in your favor. You exhaust yourself trying to solve problems that God already has the answer to. And the worst part, your worrying doesn't change a thing. It doesn't make things happen faster. It doesn't bring solutions. It doesn't fix the situation. All it does is drain you. All it does is rob you of peace. All it does is keep you distracted from what really matters. And while you're busy trying to figure everything out, you're missing the simple truth. God just wants you to trust him. He never asked you to solve every problem. He never told you to carry the weight alone. He never expected you to know every step before you take the first one. He simply said, trust me. That's it. He didn't say stress over it. He didn't say overthink it. He didn't say try to control it. He just said, trust me. But here's the thing, you can't trust and control at the same time. You can't say you believe while still trying to handle it all yourself. You can't pray for guidance and then ignore the signs because they don't match your plan. You have to make a choice. Are you going to keep trying to figure it out on your own, or are you going to trust that God already has it figured out? Trusting God means letting go of your need to know everything. It means releasing the worry, releasing the fear, releasing the doubt, and believing that even when things don't make sense, they're still working for your good. It means understanding that just because you don't see the full picture doesn't mean the picture isn't coming together perfectly. It means having faith that even when things don't go according to your plan, they're still going according to his. You think that if you stop trying to figure it all out, everything will fall apart. But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the moment you let go, the moment you stop overthinking, the moment you finally release control, that's when things will start falling into place. Maybe what you've been waiting for is on the other side of surrender. Maybe the clarity you've been seeking will come when you stop trying to force it. Maybe the breakthrough you've been praying for will come when you finally trust that it's already in motion. You've been carrying this burden for too long. You've been trying to figure it out for too long. You've been exhausting yourself with worry for too long. And the entire time, God has been waiting for you to do the one thing he actually asked of you. Stop trying to control it. Stop trying to force it. Stop trying to figure it all out. Just trust. Your job is obedience. God's job is the outcome. You wake up every day with a list of things you need to do, goals you want to accomplish, and plans you've set in place. You have dreams, ambitions, and expectations for how life should unfold. You work hard, you strategize, you push yourself, and you do everything in your power to make things happen. But at the same time, you worry, You stress over whether things will turn out the way you hope. You analyze every detail, trying to predict outcomes and control situations that were never meant to be in your hands. You put all this pressure on yourself, acting as if the success of your life depends entirely on your ability to make everything perfect. But that was never the assignment. God never told you to handle every detail, to control every situation, to carry every burden on your own. He never asked you to figure out how everything is going to work out. He simply asked you to be obedient, to trust him, to move forward in faith, even when you don't see the full picture. Your job is to take the steps he's leading you to take. His job is to handle the results. The problem is you want control. You want guarantees. You want to know that if you put in the effort, the outcome will be exactly what you expect. You want to see the reward before you make the sacrifice. You want to know the full plan before you take the first step. And when things don't happen on your timeline, when things don't go according to your plan, you start to doubt. You question whether you made the right choice, whether you heard God correctly, whether you should even keep going. You think that because the results aren't immediate, something must be wrong. You start to take matters into your own hands, trying to force things, trying to manipulate situations, trying to create the outcome you want. Listen, you're doing too much. You're stressing too much. You're overthinking everything. And for what? You're sitting here trying to figure out every single detail, trying to control every outcome, trying to solve a problem that God already has the answer to. You're losing sleep, you're running on fumes, you're carrying weight that you were never meant to carry. And the truth is, your overthinking is not making anything better. It's making you tired, it's making you doubt, it's making you anxious, and it's keeping you from trusting the one who already has it handled. See, the problem isn't the situation. The problem is your mindset. You're so focused on what could go wrong that you're blind to what God is already making right. You're so caught up in what if it doesn't work that you can't even see. God is saying, I've already worked it out. Let me tell you something. God never asked you to figure it out. He asked you to trust him. He never told you to carry the weight. He told you to give it to him. But here you go, trying to play God, trying to do it all yourself. No wonder you're drained. No wonder you're frustrated. I need you to understand something. Your job is obedience. God's job is outcome. Stop trying to swap roles with him. Your job is to show up, to stay faithful, to do what you can do, and let God do what only he can do. Like, I don't care what it looks like right now. I don't care what the bank account says. I don't care what the doctor's report says. I don't care what people are saying about you. God is moving behind the scenes in ways you can't even imagine. But if you keep overthinking, if you keep doubting, if you keep stressing, you're going to miss it. So today I need you to do one thing. Let it go. Breathe, release it. Give it to God and trust that he's got it covered, because the truth is he had it handled before you even knew it was a problem. So stop overthinking, stop worrying, stop doubting. God is already handling it. Now go walk in faith like you know it's already done. Your overthinking is not solving the problem. It's making it worse. You wake up and before your feet even hit the ground, your mind is already racing. You're playing out scenarios that haven't happened yet, stressing over things that might not even come to pass, and questioning every little decision like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And the crazy part, you do it every single day. You've convinced yourself that if you don't analyze every detail, if you don't think through every possibility, something is going to go wrong. You believe that if you stop overthinking, you're somehow being careless, as if your stress is the thing keeping everything together. But the truth is, your overthinking isn't helping, it's breaking you down. You sit there replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you said the right thing, if you should have handled it differently, if people took it the wrong way. You question your decisions, second guess yourself, and hesitate when it's time to take action. You think you're being cautious, but what you're really doing is keeping yourself stuck. Overthinking is not protecting you, it's paralyzing you. It's keeping you from moving forward, keeping you from peace, keeping you from trusting that things are already working in your favor. Think about the last time you spent hours over analyzing something. Did it change anything? Did it fix the problem? Or did it just drain your energy, make you anxious, and leave you feeling worse than before? That's the thing. Overthinking is not productive. It tricks you into believing you're being responsible, but all it's doing is creating fear and doubt. The more you overthink, the more your problems seem bigger than they really are. What should have been a simple decision turns into a crisis in your mind. What should have been a moment of faith turns into a moment of fear. What should have been a step forward turns into you standing still, afraid to make the wrong move. Overthinking is exhausting. It's like running a mental marathon every single day without ever reaching the finish line. You wear yourself out with all the what ifs, all the overanalyzing, all the unnecessary stress. And at the end of the day, you're too tired to even enjoy life. And the worst part, the things you worried about didn't even happen the way you imagined. Half the things you stress over never come to pass. And the ones that do, they never play out exactly how you thought they would. So you wasted all that time, all that energy, all that peace on something that was never yours to carry in the first place. You overthink because you want control. You want to make sure everything turns out the way you expect. You want to predict the outcome before it happens so you can prepare yourself for the worst. But in doing that, you block yourself from trusting the process. You block yourself from believing that God is already working on your behalf. You block yourself from seeing the blessings that are unfolding right in front of you. Because when you overthink, you're not present. Your mind is in the future, stressing over things that haven't happened yet or in the past, replaying things you can't change. And every moment you spend overthinking is a moment you lose in the present. You think that by overthinking, you're protecting yourself from failure, but in reality, you're keeping yourself from success. You're so afraid of making the wrong move that you end up making no move at all. You're so scared of things not going your way that you refuse to step out in faith. You want all the answers before you take the first step. But that's not how life works. Sometimes you have to move forward even when you don't have it all figured out. Sometimes you have to trust that the path will reveal itself as you go. But as long as you're overthinking, you're not moving. You're stuck in your head and life is passing you by. Think about all the times you hesitated because of overthinking, all the opportunities you missed because you were too busy analyzing every possible outcome, all the moments of joy you lost because you were too busy worrying about what could go wrong, all the prayers you prayed asking for an answer only to overthink the answer when it came. How much longer are you going to let your own thoughts hold you back? How much longer are you going to let fear keep you from stepping into what's already meant for you? You keep overthinking as if that's going to give you more control, but control is an illusion. No matter how much you think, no matter how much you plan, there will always be things that are out of your hands. And that's okay. You were never meant to handle it all on your own. You were never meant to carry every burden, to have every answer, to figure everything out by yourself. You have to learn to let go. You have to learn to trust. You have to learn that just because you don't see the way doesn't mean there isn't one. You think that overthinking is a sign of intelligence, a sign of responsibility, a sign that you're taking things seriously, but really it's a sign that you're struggling to trust. It's a sign that you're letting fear lead instead of faith. It's a sign that you're trying to control things that were never meant to be in your hands. And the more you overthink, the more you push away the very things you're hoping for, because faith and overthinking don't mix. You can't say you trust while still trying to calculate every outcome. You can't say you believe while still doubting every step of the process. You can't say you have faith while living in fear of what might go wrong. So what do? You stop, you take a deep breath, you remind yourself that overthinking is not helping. You recognize that the more you try to control, the more anxious you become. You start shifting your mindset. Instead of playing out the worst case scenario, start focusing on the best case scenario. Instead of stressing over what might go wrong, start believing that things are already working in your favor. Instead of doubting yourself, start trusting that you have everything you need to move forward. Overthinking is a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. It starts with awareness, recognizing when you're doing it, calling it out, and choosing a different response. It starts with faith, reminding yourself that you are not in this alone, that you're being guided, that things are unfolding exactly as they should. It starts with action, making decisions and trusting that even if things don't go perfectly, you will still be okay